Millionaire CEO's Fake Bride, a janitor's story. In the heart of the town, CEO Ryder Flynn stood at the pinnacle of success. His company, Flynn Enterprises, was a global powerhouse. But Ryder's personal life was a different story. His grandmother, Adeline Flynn, had one condition for him before he could inherit the company: he had to be married by his 35th birthday. Ryder's jaw clenched as he thought about the stipulation. He had built the company from scratch, and now his personal life was being dictated. Inside the large living room, a dinner party was taking place and Adeline was addressing her grandson. She sat across Ryder on the polished mahogany dining table. Her silver curly hair and framed sharp eyes had seen empires built. The will is clear. If you are not married by your 35th birthday, you relinquish all voting rights within the company. It's your father's stipulation, not mine. You're brilliant, Ryder, Adeline said, her tone almost soft. But brilliance alone doesn't build legacies. Families should be included. You have to start a family of yours. Until you do so, I doubt if you would be able to inherit the company. The room went still. Dozens of cousins, board members in designer suits, and wives holding champagne flutes tried to appear invisible. Ryder stood, his chair scraping the marble floor. "Excuse me." Without waiting for acknowledgement, he strode from the dining room, past servers and tuxedos, and a string quartet playing near the balcony. He turned a corner too sharply and nearly collided with a janitor crouched beside a cleaning cart. "Watch it." Ryder snapped, then stopped and called the janitor's name. "Ava." She looked up, startled. Her dark hair was pulled into a loose bun, a few strands escaping around her flushed face. Her uniform was neat but plain, and she held a spray bottle in one gloved hand. "I'm sorry," she said automatically, starting to move aside. Ryder narrowed his eyes. "You are not supposed to be on this floor during events. Someone spilled champagne down the hallway. I was told to clean it." Ryder's temper, already frayed, sparked. "Do you always talk back to executives?" Ava stood up, short but unyielding. "Do you always explode at people doing their job?" Ryder stared at her. There was something infuriatingly calm in her gaze. No fear, no flattery, just exhaustion and honesty. He scoffed. "You would not last a minute in my world." Ava crossed her arms and responded. "And you would not last a day in mine." Something dangerous curled in Ryder's chest. He took a step closer. "If you were my wife, you'd understand why I am this way." Ava rolled her eyes. "If I were your wife, I'd probably have set your suit on fire by now." Ryder blinked. Then suddenly, recklessly, he said, "Do it." Ava frowned. "What? Be your wife?" she asked. "Yes, pretend to be. For 6 months we stay married, convince my family it is real, then disappear. You get paid. I keep my company. Simple." Ava stared at him, then burst out laughing. "Oh my God, you're serious?" Ryder nodded once, completely. Ava shook her head, incredulous. "Why me? Why not one of your model friends or a struggling actress?" Ryder's expression shifted slightly. "Because they would expect something in return. You clearly despise me. It keeps things clean." Ava's expression shifted just slightly. "This is insane." Ryder pulled out his phone, tapped quickly, and showed her a number on the screen. Ava stared at it. Her hand trembled slightly. "That covers your mother's hospital bills," he said quietly. "And puts your brother through 4 years of college." Ava's face went still. Ryder added, "You are really serious about this?" "Okay, while we are on the pretense, there would be no intimacy, no real commitment. Just play the part for 6 months. Ava glanced down the hallway, then back at him. "And after 6 months, we divorce. You vanish." Ava looked at him, and for the first time Ryder felt unsure. Then she exhaled slowly. "Fine, I'll do it." Ryder raised an eyebrow. "Just like that?" "No," Ava replied. "Not just like that. But people like me don't get fairy tale endings. We get contracts. I'll read the fine print." Ryder smirked. "You'll find my terms are fair. I will send you a message on where and when we will have our first meeting." Ava picked up her cleaning cloth and walked away. Over her shoulder, she called, "Try not to be insufferable during our fake honeymoon." The contract was signed within 48 hours. Lawyers were sworn to secrecy. A dazzling diamond ring appeared on Ava's finger. A formal engagement announcement was released to the press. Flynn Enterprises CEO Ryder Flynn engaged to longtime girlfriend, Ava Calderon. A photo of them laughing on a rooftop terrace accompanied the piece, staged to perfection. Behind closed doors, they barely spoke unless absolutely necessary. Ava moved into Ryder's penthouse the following week. She had her own wing, complete with a minimalist guest suite, private entrance, and a view of the downtown skyline. Every day, Ryder left early to work and returned late. He maintained a calendar so precisely that Ava could almost guess his footsteps by the minute. But in public, everything had to change. Their first test came at a gala for the Flynn Foundation, an event dripping with Hollywood elites, industry moguls, and the insatiable eyes of family members looking for cracks in the facade. Ava wore a sleek emerald gown that clung to her body like second skin. Her hair was in soft waves, her makeup done by a professional team. Ryder insisted on hiring. As they stepped out of the car, cameras flashed like gunfire. "Smile like you love me," Ryder murmured through clenched teeth. Ava looped her arm through his and whispered back, "Smile like you've earned it." They moved through the crowd like magnets, poised, charming, intimate. He rested his hand on the small of her back. She laughed too loudly at his dry jokes. For a moment, Ryder forgot it was all a lie, but she didn't. Then came the close call. They were seated at a dinner table next to Ryder's cousin Clara, who was infamous for sniffing out scandals like a bloodhound. Clara leaned in mid-dinner, swirling her wine. "So, Ava," she began sweetly, "what was the name of that little cafe where Ryder proposed? He told me it was very intimate." Ava froze for half a second. Ryder's jaw clenched. They hadn't agreed on proposal details yet. Ava smiled quickly, her fork pausing midair. "Oh, Café Leora in Malibu," she said smoothly. "We used to go there before he was this busy." He slipped the ring into a croissant. "Nearly broke my tooth." She laughed, and to her surprise, Ryder laughed too, genuinely. Clara narrowed her eyes. "I see," she said slowly. "You remembered it wrong, Ryder. You told me it was a French bistro in the city." Ava leaned in conspiratorially. "Oh, he gets flustered. Can't even tell his left from his right when he's nervous. You should have seen him fumbling the ring. He nearly dropped it into the ocean." Clara's lips tightened. People laughed and the moment passed. Later that night, when they got back home, Ryder found Ava on the balcony, barefoot. "You saved me," he said, leaning beside her on the railing. "I always do," she replied, staring out at the skyline. There was a pause between them, just long enough for something unsaid to take root. "You didn't have to be so convincing," Ryder said quietly. She glanced at him. "You hired a janitor to play your wife, Ryder. I either show up or I fail. And I don't fail." He looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. But it wasn't until the weekend in Napa that things got really complicated. They were forced to share a room at the Flynn family vineyard after a storm flooded the guest house. One bed and no way to switch. As the rain poured outside, Ava stood by the window, her arms crossed. Ryder pulled off his tie, then paused, watching her. "You can have the bed," he offered. She turned to him, her face unreadable. "We're married, remember? It would be suspicious if we weren't comfortable." She climbed in and pulled the covers up to her chin, leaving a sliver of mattress space. Ryder hesitated for only a moment before joining her, back to back. Neither of them slept. The morning after, they had to pose for family breakfast with Ava wearing one of Ryder's shirts and her hair slightly scattered. Adeline watched them from across the long wooden table, a satisfied smile on her face. But under the surface, something else simmered. Pretending was supposed to be the easy part. But now, Ryder wasn't sure which parts were pretense anymore. And Ava? She was starting to wonder the same thing. It had been 2 months since their engagement. 2 months of matching outfits and forced laughter. 2 months of pretense. When Ryder informed her that they would be attending another event, Ava hoped that nobody would discover that they were pretending. The event was for a children's literacy foundation, and Ava was seated next to Victoria Langford, the daughter of a tech mogul and a longtime friend of Ryder's. Victoria leaned in, her champagne untouched but her smile sharp. "So how did you two meet again?" she asked, her tone sugar-laced venom. Ava paused. She'd rehearsed this. "We met at a private gallery opening in Venice. I was working at the event and he was sulking in the corner. I told him his taste in art was pretentious." Victoria blinked. "How charming." Her eyes flicked to Ava's ring. "You know, Ryder and I almost dated. Back in Tokyo. Did he ever tell you?" Ava kept her face neutral. "He didn't mention it. Probably because he considers near misses irrelevant." That earned a few raised eyebrows from surrounding tables. Victoria's smile thinned. "Interesting. I never thought Ryder went for the humble origins type." Ava's reply was cool and unhurried. "Well, it takes a man of real power to choose character over pedigree." Across the room, Ryder watched them, his brow furrowed. Later, as their driver pulled away from the event, he asked, "What did Victoria say to you?" "Nothing I couldn't handle," Ava replied. She looked out the window. But your past keeps trying to claw its way into the present. You might want to leash it. Ryder was quiet for a long moment. Do you always deflect when someone tries to get close? Ava turned to him, her gaze sharp. Do you? Ryder smiled and walked into the house. Everything was going according to plan until a photo surfaced. One of Ava's pictures taken weeks earlier, where she wasn't wearing her engagement ring. Ryder's Aunt Nora, a cunning woman with a lawyer's instincts, cornered them by the champagne bar. Strange thing, she said, flipping her phone around. This was posted by a fashion blog yesterday. Ava at the row browsing handbags. No ring. Care to explain? Ava didn't flinch. Oh, I had to get it resized. The band kept slipping. Nora raised a brow. Funny. You'd think a millionaire could get the right ring size the first time. Before Ava could answer, Ryder stepped in. I picked the ring before we were official. It was impulsive. He slipped an arm around Ava's waist, pulling her closer. I was afraid she'd say no. So I bought it the same night I realized I was in love with her. The moment hung suspended in the air. Ava stared up at him, blinking. He hadn't warned her about that twist in the script. Nora narrowed her eyes. Romantic. They barely made it to the elevator before Ava turned to him. You can't just improvise lines like that. You'd rather I let her tear you apart? Ryder shot back. You said you didn't want complications. Love is a complication. So is making this look believable. They stood there, breathing hard. Too close. Too real. And just like that, the elevator doors opened and one of the investors stepped inside with them. Ryder immediately grabbed Ava's hand and laced their fingers together. The older man smiled. Ah, newlyweds. I can feel the chemistry. Ava smiled stiffly. That night, Ava stood at her bedroom door for a long time, hand on the knob. Something made her turn around and walk back down the hall. She knocked on Ryder's door. It opened. He looked tired. Something wrong? He asked. I need clarity, she said. That thing you said earlier. Was it just for show? Ryder looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, does it matter? Yes, she said quietly. It does. He hesitated, then stepped back and let her in. Because the truth was, pretending to be in love was becoming the hard part. Ava stood in the middle of Ryder's suite, arms folded across her chest, trying to hold the tension at bay. The room was dim, just the city lights outside casting long shadows across polished floors and glass walls. Ryder didn't move. He leaned against the door frame, watching her like she was both a puzzle and a threat. You never answered me, she said finally. Ryder exhaled slowly. Everything we say in public is scripted. That's the deal. That wasn't the question. No, he said. It wasn't. He walked to the small bar in the corner, poured himself a whiskey, and then looked at her over the rim of the glass. I said what I needed to say to protect you. That's part of the contract too. Isn't it? Ava's lips curved slightly, but there was no warmth in it. You're terrified of anything you can't control, aren't you? He stared at her. You think I'm scared of you? No, she said, stepping closer. I think you're scared of what I might mean. That landed harder than she intended, and she saw it in his face. I know exactly what this is, Ryder said. A transaction. We agreed on the rules. Right, Ava said. And we both know how well people follow rules once feelings get involved. She turned, hand on the door. Just remember, you're not the only one pretending. 3 weeks later, they had nearly settled into a rhythm smooth enough to be convincing, distant enough to be safe. Until the charity auction for the Flynn Foundation's children's wing. The night began with the usual display, Ava on Ryder's arm, a flash of perfect smiles, eyes locked like they were the only people in the room. He whispered compliments into her ear, his hand never leaving her waist. They kissed twice for cameras, of course, and won a standing ovation when a painting Ryder gifted Ava sold for $240,000. Everything was going on great. Until someone in the crowd yelled, "Kiss her like you mean it." Ava froze for half a second. Ryder didn't. He turned her toward him, cupped the back of her neck, and kissed her. But this time it wasn't just for show. It was possessive and intentional. Something in it cracked through Ava's wall, lit up every nerve ending, and threatened to tear apart everything they'd built on illusion. When he pulled away, she stared at him, stunned. He didn't smile. He just gazed at her. Backstage, after the event, she cornered him. What the hell was that? You think I planned that? He snapped. You meant it. Ryder's hands curled into fists at his sides. I don't know what I meant anymore. She stepped closer, her voice lowering. You're playing with fire. So are you. Silence swelled between them like a third presence in the room. We have rules, she said again, but her voice was weak this time. Maybe we need new ones, he replied. Ones that reflect reality. She stepped back, visibly shaken. You want real? Then answer me this. What happens when the 6 months are up and we're supposed to walk away? He didn't answer. 2 nights later, it happened. They were at a weekend retreat with the board. Ryder's inner circle. A remote estate in Big Sur. There were no photographers. Ava found herself alone in the kitchen late at night, making tea. She wasn't sleeping anymore. She hadn't been, really, since the kiss. Ryder walked in, silent, barefoot, wearing a white t-shirt and sweatpants. He was looking very handsome. He didn't say anything at first, just walked to the counter and poured water into a glass. You're not sleeping either, she said quietly. No, he turned. You've been avoiding me. I've been protecting us. He stepped closer, closing the space between them. What if I don't want to be protected? She blinked. That's not part of the deal. He leaned down, his voice barely audible. What if the deal changed? Her breath caught, and then impulsively, she kissed him. This time there was no camera. No aunt watching. No contract hovering between them. Just 2 people caught in the undertow of everything they swore they wouldn't feel. They broke apart eventually, both breathless. Ryder looked at her like she was gravity. I don't know when it stopped being fake, he said. Ava swallowed. That's the problem. I don't know either. But someone had been watching. From the hallway behind the cracked pantry door, Clara Flynn's assistant had seen everything. And the next morning, a private message pinged in Clara's inbox. Subject: You were right. The marriage is fake. Here's proof. The email hit Clara Flynn's inbox like a missile. Attached, a time-stamped video of Ryder and Ava in the kitchen at the Big Sur estate. The kiss was unmistakable, too hungry, too electric, too real to be part of any polished PR campaign. The angle was grainy, likely shot through the cracked pantry door. But the intimacy was unmistakable. Clara didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She merely sat back, fingers steepled, and whispered, Let's see how far you're willing to fall, cousin. 2 days later, the boardroom at Flynn Enterprises was quiet. Ryder sat at the head of the table, flanked by Ava on his left and his legal advisor on his right. Across from him was his grandmother, Adeline Flynn. Next to her was Clara, smirking with the satisfaction of someone who'd finally cracked a riddle she'd been chasing for months. We received a concerning communication, Clara began, sliding a packet onto the glossy wood table. It alleges that your marriage is a fabrication. That Ava Calderon is an employee, not a partner. That your relationship was a transactional arrangement designed to fulfill grandmother's inheritance clause. Ava's fingers curled around the edge of her chair. Ryder didn't blink, and then he said, That's a bold accusation. Clara slid the video across the table. And now a bold truth. Adeline watched silently, eyes narrowed as the video played. It wasn't long. Just a kiss. But in the context of Ryder's meteoric rise and the inheritance he was poised to receive, it was damning. When it ended, Adeline leaned forward. Well, Ryder could have denied it. He could have spun another lie. Ava looked at him, silent, waiting for him to choose. But instead, he stood up and said, It was fake. In the beginning. Gasps rippled across the room. Adeline raised a hand, quieting them. Ava was never supposed to be part of my future. Just a placeholder. A box checked. Ryder's voice remained steady. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being a lie. And I stopped being in control. He turned toward Ava. I tried to keep you at a distance. I failed. You walked into this thinking it was a 6-month contract. But I never planned for what came after. Ava's eyes burned. Why are you saying this? She asked. Because I'm done pretending. I'm done letting fear make my decisions. And if that costs me everything, so be it. Ryder responded. A long silence fell over the room. Adeline finally spoke. You lied to me. To the board. To this family. Ryder nodded once. I did. Adeline stood slowly, walking around the table until she was face to face with Ava. The older woman studied her like a jeweler examines a rare gem. And you? Why did you agree to this lie? Ava spoke carefully. For survival. For my family. And because I didn't think people like me got to want more. And now? Adeline asked. Ava looked at Ryder, heart racing. Now I don't know if I'm brave enough to leave. Adeline's gaze was unreadable. Then finally she said, families don't start perfect. They become it. She turned to Clara. Isn't that right, dear? Clara's smile faltered. Thereafter, Adeline addressed the room. Ryder will retain his role as CEO. The board will vote on new ethics compliance protocols. And I'll update the succession clause immediately. Ryder blinked. Grandma, you're not cutting me out? I said I wanted a legacy, Adeline said. And legacies aren't built on flawless reputations. They're built on truth. Painful, messy, human truth. She looked at Ava again. You remind me of myself at your age. That's probably why you drive Ryder crazy. Ava smiled despite herself. It's a skill. 3 months later, their wedding took place. The wedding was just with a few people but real this time. Just a garden, a string quartet, a handful of people who had earned the right to be there. Ryder held her hand as they stood under the arch of white roses. No cameras and no press. Just them. The man who had everything and the woman who taught him what it meant to risk it all. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," he didn't hesitate. And Ava didn't pretend. 6 months after their fake engagement ended in a real marriage, a small quote appeared in a magazine profile on Ava Flynn, co-founder of a new inner-city education fund. Sometimes love starts as a lie. But the best kind of lies are the ones that teach you the truth. We have come to the end of the story. Thanks for being part of Chetnal's graceful stories. Remember, every ending is a new beginning. Stay hopeful, kind, and blessed. I'll see you in the next story.